Anything else, colleagues, before we have the last presentation? Manager, staff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chief. Manager, you want to lay out the last one?
Sure. I'm actually going to have ACM Mariano introduce our last topic, which is a presentation of the Winter Storm Uri Task Force findings. ACM Mariano.
Thank you, City Manager. Again, Ray Arianos, Assistant City Manager. As with any significant emergency event, the city's Homeland Security and Emergency Management Department, as we've sort of discussed here, coordinates the development of an after-action report in order to determine how we as an organization, in partnership with federal, state, and local agencies, nonprofits, and the community, can improve our response to future emergencies. The city engaged a consultant to assist in the development of the report, which is projected to be complete in September. Clearly, as an organization, we heard the many voices from the community in reaction to Winter Storm Uri. And through its resolution 2021-03-25-067, Council directed the creation of a Winter Storm Review Task Force for the purpose of holding open public listening sessions and to provide Council a report on the information gleaned from the community. That report has been completed, and today, members of the task force, led by Chair Saretta Davis, will present a summary of their report.
Thank you. My name is Saretta Davis. I am the chair of the Winter Storm Review Task Force. I'm also chair of the City of Austin Human Rights Commission. I was appointed to that commission by Mayor Adler and have served there since July of 2015. I'm first going to thank Councilmember Tovo and your push for the importance of this task force and the work we're doing, and all other council members that joined our speaking sessions or reached out to us to offer support in what we were doing. I will say it was quite a venture in terms of being a task force that really, I believe, took a lot of the brunt of community frustration, fear, and anger, and gave them a place to express that. I also want to give a special thanks to all the task force members. I believe only 3 of us are still on due to wait times right now, and we will be providing the presentation, but task force members worked extremely hard in this effort. And a very, very special thanks to our liaison, Patricia Bournain. She did a great job with hardly any notice sometimes in getting our speaking sessions together, making sure everything functioned properly, and also just herding cats, in addition to all her other duties. I will present this briefing today along with Rebecca Austin. She is the chair of the Commission for Women, and she is the vice chair of the task force, and the chair of the College Student Commission, Jeffrey Clemens, today. We did provide our final report as a backup document. If you'd like to follow along, each slide in our presentation will have the page numbers related to what's in our larger report. We will be sharing feedback and recommendations we received from speakers in those listening sessions. And of course, a special thank you to citizens of Austin who made time to attend our listening sessions that were majority of the time we were not able to hold them at the most opportune times for working individuals. We will begin with Vice Chair of our task force, Rebecca Austin, and we'll start our briefing.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Sarita. I'd like to start just by acknowledging all of the members of the task force. These are all volunteers. They serve on our commissions, so they already carry a heavy load supporting the city and its efforts, and really stepped up and showed up for this task force over the last several months. So I just want to acknowledge them by reading their names: Miriam Connor, Molly Wang, Jeffrey Clemens, myself, Sally Van Sickle, Manuel Jimenez, Aletha Houston, Ricardo Garay, Sarita Davis, Catherine Gonzalez, and Jonathan Franks. And you can see all of their affiliations. These are representatives of the quality of life and joint inclusion committees, and really represent the voices of citizens across our city, different neighborhoods, different demographics, and different constituencies. And I'll echo the shout out to Patricia, who really held us up throughout this process. Let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So when the task force was commissioned at that March resolution, the purpose of the task force was to convene public listening sessions in order to solicit feedback from the citizens of Austin about Winter Storm Uri. We held our first kickoff meeting in mid-April. That was really an organizational or operational meeting to organize the committee, to elect the chair and the vice chair, and to get underway. At that time, we then scheduled a series of 5 different listening sessions over the next 2 months, from April through June. Knowing that we had to do this virtually, there really wasn't an in-person option. We tried to accommodate different times of day, different days of the week, but we also had the challenges of, simply getting times and dates on the city calendar and being able to advertise those. So we were as flexible as possible, and also had the option of individuals submitting written testimony as well as photos and videos if they couldn't attend a meeting in person. And whenever we received that written testimony, we always read it in at a meeting in order to make sure that it was on record. You can see also in the schedule here, we had debriefs after each of the listening sessions. So that was an opportunity for the task force to convene, process what we heard at the last session, fine tune our approach. We didn't have a guidebook for this, so we were really determining as we went the best way to hear from citizens and how much time to allot each person. We didn't want to be under the constraints of Robert's rules and very limited time segments, so we essentially divided up the available time by the number of speakers to give people the maximum time to speak as possible. So we fine-tuned that process along the way with each of those debriefs. And then you'll see towards the end of the schedule in June, we wrapped up the public listening sessions and then held 2 report planning meetings, as well as several ad hoc working group meetings in order to synthesize all of our findings, and developed a report which went to City Council at the end of July. I'll also note that the city did a big lift here in terms of setting up a website for the task force, setting up a speak up page so that citizens could provide written or social media type of testimony, putting the word out about all of the events through social media, through communications forums. You'll see in the report, if you refer to the cover letter on the first few pages, that there's a lot of press coverage that we got and other media information to make sure that we were going to share the word. In total, we had 27 speakers at the events. We had 20 written testimonies that were entered, 5 council members. Thank you for all of you who were able to participate in the meetings and also provide testimony on behalf of your districts. We also had reports from several different groups, and then members of the task force also leveraged their own networks to reach out to nonprofits, community organizations, and others to make sure that we were hearing from the broadest group of citizens possible. Next slide, please. And so I'll just note that if you consider the 5 meetings, each one lasted a couple of hours, the written testimony, the reports and all of that, there was a lot of information that we took in. Again, our goal was to make sure that we could aggregate this information and present it to you in a cohesive way. And so as we comb through all of the findings and recommendations that we heard from citizens, they fell into the categories that you see here. So as we go through the report and the presentation, you'll see that we have a readout on each of the different categories here that we heard from citizens. I will also note that when you see recommendations, those are recommendations we heard from the community. These are not necessarily things that were formed or endorsed by the task force members, as much as community members showed up not only talking about their experience, but recommending ways that the city could do better in the future or that organizations could help support it. So those recommendations come from the community. They have not been formally researched or vetted, so we're not standing up and endorsing those as the way to go. We're presenting this back to council as additional information that you can use with other information sources to make the best decisions on behalf of the city. I will also say that while a lot of what we heard was critical, Sarita introduced us saying, there's a lot of pain and trauma that people experienced through this event. There was also a lot of positive feedback about the way that individuals rose to the challenge, that organizations supported each other, that members of the city departments, went way above and beyond to do well beyond what their jobs were, and just, humans looking out for other humans. So you'll see, throughout the report, as much as there may be critiques, there's a lot of inspirational feedback as well, just about how the city rose to this challenge and how we responded to that. The other thing is that you'll see at the end of the report a draft of the Community Resilience Trust report. That's a parallel work effort that was going on as we were collecting feedback. So we attempted to share as much as we could of their findings, but they have considerably more detail that we didn't have a chance again to break down into all of its components, and we would encourage you to refer to that content as well. With that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Task Force Member Clemens to start going through the findings, and then he'll pass that over to Chair Davis. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Task Member Austin, and thank you, City Council members, for taking the time to hear us present the report today. If you'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, get started there. So I think the reason why we put communications first in this report is because probably the overwhelming majority of the testimony that we heard from many citizens centered around how the city was communicating emergency services and messages to the public. And so, you know, the first words of the actual report are, while social media is an effective form of communication, the use of social media during the storm was with sporadic updates was problematic. You'll notice that on page 5, we even included an example of one of those tweets that was quite problematic in terms of not really communicating a lot of good information to the public. And so that was one of the key criticisms that we continued to hear from the community, is that there needed to be a better and clearer communication system. In addition to that, there should have probably been a much larger swath of different resources used. So we just heard about how potentially transistor radios would have been very useful to have during this time when people could not charge their devices. They didn't have access to the internet because, you know, towers are going down and things of the like. So text messages sometimes were not even the best option. We heard many stories of people who were charging their phones in their cars in order to be able to get just enough juice and enough signal to be able to get a message. And so there was definitely a need to fill that dearth of different communication sources. That being said, however, as Rebecca mentioned at the top, you know, we did see a lot of community resilience throughout this entire storm. And one of the examples of that was that many neighborhoods created phone trees where they would call their neighbors and they would check on their neighbors, and the neighbor would check on another neighbor. And on page 4 of the report, you'll actually see basically like a diagram of what that looks like. Another thing that we heard that was really important, and I hope that the council acts on, is the need to translate more of the information that we have into different languages, since we obviously have you know, many different communities that speak many different languages. With the task force, we also tried to translate our materials so that people could come from those communities and actually provide their feedback by putting into those different languages. But also, as we see here, there are also people with disabilities who are homebound or elderly who need other options in terms of what information can be communicated to them. So that's a brief of that. If we'll move on to the next slide. Yes, so there's obviously going to be a need to use as many forms of communication as we have to their maximum capacity during these crises that we have in the city, such as a winter storm, or as we just heard from that great presentation, wildfires. And there's also going to be a greater need to coordinate and collaborate with community members to make that communication more effective and make sure that it's hitting all the possible channels. And so using as many early warning systems as possible. And again, as we just heard in the previous presentation, better educating the public on emergency preparedness is going to make us all more prepared as a community. And so we heard many community members mention that themselves and make that recommendation. We'll move on to the next slide. So another a bulk of the communication that we got from citizens also had to do with the transparency of information. You know, one major criticism was that we knew about the storm quite a while in advance before the storm ever hit ground. And there seemed to have been a lack of preparedness on the part of the city in terms of, you know, getting everyone ready for that, preparing community members, establishing those lines of communication with community partners to prepare people, get resources together for the storm. And in addition to that, once the storm was hitting, there was an inadequate and inconsistent communications about where the power was out and how long it would be out for, where people could get food and other resources, and how they could also protect their home infrastructure, such as their plumbing, since there were a lot of leaks. There's a picture later in the report of someone's apartment, you know, that got completely destroyed. by some infrastructure that had failed. And so there was definitely a need to address that and be more proactive about these things, including with respect to the infrastructure, actually improving the infrastructure right now. But as far as the recommendations that we provide in the report, it's the need to disseminate the information a lot more quickly and make sure that it's accurate. So whether that looks like, greater centralization of information, I think that Councilmember Alterman mentioned this earlier, that City Council, I'm not sure if what their role in the storm was, if it was clear, and perhaps that needs to gain greater clarity. And additionally, just better preparing for those events in the future and foreseeing that these things are going to increase with, as we continue to deal with climate change and just the reality of, the state that we're in. And so if we'll move on to the next slide. Another important aspect of the feedback that we got from the community was a great sense of a loss of community trust. This was something that we heard throughout many of the testimonies. This kind of parallels with that the lack of transparency in terms of the information that people were getting. Oftentimes it could have been inconsistent. During some of the public hearings that were held during the storm, many citizens were not able to ask questions or get their questions answered in terms of where they could get resources or where they could be going in terms of lodging and shelter, as we'll hear later on in the report. And for that matter, whenever there was a public hearing of different public officials, sometimes you would see them in their well-lit rooms. There's a picture in the report on page 7 and a quote from one of the community members who spoke that I think definitely highlights this lack of trust in the community. And so one of the recommendations that we brought out of this is that there's probably a greater need to coordinate with our quality of life commissions. So we obviously have the task force that brought together so many of our commissions, so that way we could bring our own expertise to this issue, but also our community organizations who are so helpful in our schools and faith communities. All of these communities should probably be brought into the planning process as we're going into kind of these climate disasters. We'll move on to the next slide. In the last section, second to last section that I'll cover is also the failure and breakdown of the electric grid. Obviously, this is not entirely on the city of Austin. Once again, we are in the state of Texas, where there has been kind of a decades-long divestment in terms of improving our electrical grid. It's an electric grid for profit rather than for sustainability. That being said, however, we did hear a lot of recommendations from the community about what the city can do. And with respect to that feedback, there's also a need to improve the equity in terms of our distribution of power in the city of Austin, since there were some communities that lost power for much longer than others. And the reasons for that, likely go back to our equity in terms of infrastructure. And we also were reminded of the lack of conservation that we saw throughout the city. We all recall when downtown many buildings downtown were entirely lit up, while there were many people who were in their homes and didn't have power and access to heat. And so the lack of centralized, decision-making or ability to make that decision and that call to shut down those buildings is something that the community members brought up as something to address. And so also planning to respond to these outages as they become more frequent, as they will until Texas as a whole improves our electric grid, is going to be really important. And it's something that our community members brought up, including some of them giving us some very detailed plans on what they think that could look like, which I think that are available in the report as well. The last section I'll cover, if we'll move on to the next slide, is concerning water, food, and essential supplies. There's innumerable pictures, stories, and reports about the kinds of challenges that people were facing during this time. Whether it was the lack of potable water or there was the fact that there was no organized distribution of resources until much later in the storm, was something that was consistently brought up to us, and one of the reasons why we were so thankful to all the community members and organizations who came together I believe it's in the excerpt from the Community Resilience Trust report. You know, there's a very long list of organizations who are able to help out, but it would have been better to have a centralized response that would have been faster. Additionally, with that, you know, the lack of water because of frozen pipes created sanitation issues across the city, particularly in some of our more vulnerable communities, whether that's communities with high, you know, populations of elderly folk, or even on college campuses, where students, you know, and other people were pulling buckets of water out of pools in order to be able to, you know, take baths and flush their toilet and things like that. Additionally, the food at shelters was inadequate, unhealthy, and it was not appropriate for the many different communities that we have here in Austin. The shelters, which we will talk more about later in the presentation, were another high point of the feedback that we got from community. And so if we'll move on to the next slide. Some of the recommendations are to basically establish an emergency dispatch operation that's coordinated with the city and all of our community partners. Again, going back to the previous presentation that we heard from the fire department, you know, it will take collaboration and having a well-planned approach to be able to address these crises when they occur and do it quickly. And so having those contacts more ready on hand and having more clearly established roles is going to go a long way towards ensuring that people don't have to go without food or water when they most need it. Additionally, something that we got from the testimony that we got through the universities and other people is the access to cash to be able to, even if you're going to have to go out and get supplies and food and things like that, you know, credit card machines are down. So do people have access to cash to be able to actually even get these supplies? Additionally, they're maintaining these emergency supplies of food throughout the city. In any different institutions that we have, whether those are universities and different businesses, is definitely a major recommendation that the task force came away with. And finally, we need to ensure that distribution is healthy, environmentally sound, and that it's culturally competent. So that way, not only do all community members have the things they need, but they feel like they've been included in the thoughtful planning process that I'm sure council will put together and continue to work with their community partners to develop. And so with that, I will now turn over the presentation to Sarita.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next slide, please. Lack of accountability in services. So we heard a great deal from the community, starting with things that are out of the hands of the city, of course, how they were treated by various landlords, property managers, or city officials if they own their home and they were reaching out for help or attempting to. Difficulty getting through to 311 or 911, the inability of those operators to seem to function well in the type of crisis we had during Winter Storm Uri, being short with them, hanging up on them, and then extremely long hold times. It really caused a frenzy and fear, because I think it made the situation worse, and that people, you know, maybe things weren't as bad as they were thinking once all emergency services are shut down. I think our big takeaway was, if it's emergency and emergency services, shouldn't I be able to access it in an emergency? You know, what's going on? So they basically felt helpless and like they were left alone. Confusion regarding should they try to find someone with the city, county, state, federal. I think some of that confusion, based on the feedback we received, was that they felt like, or they had the impression that where they could receive information, city officials, council members, people with the city manager's office were pushing the blame off on other officials or passing the buck. And so they didn't really know who to turn to for help, but it became increasingly obvious that they felt like they could not turn to anyone with the city for any substantive help. Positive feedback was that some people were able to have some response from the city of Austin, certain individuals, you know, specific people who rose to the challenge is some of the feedback we received. And they did want to recognize them, but they want the majority of others to be held accountable in some way. And I think perhaps even a big apology might help with that. And really a show at this point. I mean, we're several months out from the storm now, and and individuals seem, we were taking feedback through June, July, and citizens still feel that the city hasn't really given them a response that shows that they believe they are responsible for some of the failures and that things will be better in the future. So in terms of recommendations, a plan for emergency services to be able to function in a crisis and highly emergent situation, not, be told that there are emergency services that can't function, for example, because they don't have the training to drive on ice or in snow when they have 4x4 vehicles. Clearly documented plan that's communicated to citizens where they know where to find it. We heard a little about that in the last presentation in terms of at least fire. People need to know what to do or how to react. And some of us offered information regarding, if you were raised in other states that have certain natural disasters occur regularly, like tornadoes, et cetera, you already know what the plan is if something happens, so that you're not scrambling to try to communicate with people when your electrical grid fails during a serious emergency. And again, the Community Resilience Trust, in their separate report, they have a lot of detail regarding that. Next slide, please. Infrastructure breakdown and failures. And people do not understand why there is equipment to clear roads, but it wasn't used to make the roads more accessible. We all know that major overpasses and freeways were shut down, so perhaps they couldn't escape the city, but it would have given them a sense that they could try to get to neighbors or other facilities for help, or try to get to a store that may be open to get food and other supplies. Individuals, caretakers couldn't get to them. The time it took to clear the roads, restore power, and we do live in Texas, but we received a lot of feedback from homeowners in particular regarding whether or not their homes were built to code, even to code by the standards that we're used to without anomalous storms occurring. They'd like the city to look into those areas. Emergency services equipment, training, and procedures for severe weather was one of the biggest recommendations. Again, it's very hard pill to swallow for the citizens of Austin that their emergency services could not help them because they did not know how to help them. No one was prepared to hear that. Coordinate transportation for vulnerable citizens, have a special emergency service just for that. Of course, those individuals will need to identify themselves to some department and make themselves known so that if there's a storm, they know that help is on the way, someone is coming to get them. I can tell you with my personal work during the storm with the Community Resilience Trust, a woman who had a daughter that relies on a breathing machine, and she had a backup, but the backup was, being drained, and she didn't know how her daughter, who has a particular disability, would be able to breathe. And we actually had to find a community member, a regular citizen with the 4x4 that was able to pick them up and get them to adult children. So she did not understand why an emergency services vehicle could not come for her in that type of situation. Provide assistance for those who experience damage or need upgrades for protection to their homes. There seems to be a lot of confusion for homeowners in terms of what help the city can afford them, especially with regard to their insurance plans being unable to pay them so that they can pay for the cost of repairs for their home because of lack of documentation by certain city code officials. Next slide, please. Access to shelter and lodging. We all know we still have a very large segment of individuals without homes in our city who basically are invited to be here because of the city's policy and council's view of trying to help people in this situation. That being said, they had to turn to community groups like Survive to Thrive, who's used to housing individuals in domestic violence emergency situations, Austin Mutual Aid, and others, because there seemed to be no way to get help with regard to funds, finding housing, hotels, et cetera, from the city manager's office. There are a lot of questions in the community about that, and hopefully at some point there will be a substantive response to that. Hotels, we had reports of hotels that were price gouging and overcharging in these situations. Citizens would like that to be looked into, and they would like to see some accountability there for those hotels that were truly price gouging and trying to take economic advantage of the situation. Warming centers that at first, the first week of the storm, individuals were not prepared to go to a warming center and be told they had to leave at 8 or 9 p.m. Because that greatly defeated the purpose of them finding a way there, especially individuals without homes, to get warm and then be turned out into the cold at night when it's going to be the coldest portion of the day at that point. Concerns about using shelters during a pandemic, shelters that were available being inaccessible for individuals with disabilities or have other special needs. And people were also reluctant to leave their pets. And I don't believe it's here, but we did receive a lot of feedback regarding emergency services for animals, and the need to keep a line going where people can call in and receive help there as well. So as far as recommendations, a need for emergency plan that makes sure all means of help are accessible to all citizens, and coordination between the city and other organizations to help vulnerable people. And please address the reports of price gouging by hotels and other places that claim they could take in individuals who were at home without water or heat or who had nowhere to live. Next slide, please. I think you need to go back one. Okay, thank you. Role of nonprofits, community organizations, and neighborhood groups. There are many community groups, nonprofits, faith-based groups who stepped up immediately and were actually planning before the worst part of the storm hit to provide food and water, potable water for people to drink, to coordinate an effort to have different depots throughout the city for people, if you could get to them, they would feed you. And then later on, we're taking them door to door. These organizations, at the time we were taking feedback, had not received funding from the city to help with that, or we would consider it, I would consider it repayment. So you had individuals with some of these, and some are, very young, but they were using their personal credit cards to provide aid to the rest of the citizens of Austin. So in terms of recommendations, the need to have an organized dispatch center, because these nonprofits and community groups had to form a makeshift dispatch to be able to coordinate with one another so that they would not duplicate efforts and so that they could streamline getting things done. No one with the city, with regard to supplies, food, and helping citizens in that manner, was involved with that effort. I was a big part of that effort, and other than joining calls once in a while, in terms of actual action and the city being involved in that, there was not a lot going on. I know Council Member Harper Madison was able to help, but citizens definitely were disillusioned by not seeing their particular district council member there to help. Strengthen relationships and funding with community organizations and nonprofits. One of the big things that came out of this is that because of the ability of certain nonprofits and faith-based groups to help, it seems like, and that in conjunction with the city now coming up with an emergency plan for the future, it might be good to offer some help to these community groups in terms of funding to help them grow to scale, and to also make sure there's a great relationship there during another catastrophe, so that the city can work in coordination with these nonprofits, businesses, faith-based groups, so that it's a joint community effort. Next slide, please. The need for mental health resources. Of course, we all know the city was already operating in a pandemic when the storm hit. This exacerbated the stressors, anxiety, and other mental health issues people were already suffering from, dealing with school closures, financial insecurity, loss of jobs, and other challenges. And so we did hear a good amount of feedback from citizens who not only during the time of crisis, but now would like some help finding mental health resources from the city to deal with, for those who felt like they very much experienced trauma and are still trying to heal from that trauma during the storm. They would like to know what resources, as far as mental health, the city could help them find. Establishing a plan to check on vulnerable and isolated residents during a catastrophe. They'd like that capacity to increase during emergency situations. And I stated it before, but we received a lot of feedback regarding animal welfare rescue and service animals. Apparently there is a line that 311 can connect people to get help with their animals, service animals. And again, all those lines were shut down for a long period during the storm. Next line, please. Slide, please. The Community Resilience Trust synopsis and recommendations. There's a very extensive report. I believe the Community Resilience Trust, I don't know if they have already, they're supposed to supply to the mayor and to the city manager, but they wanted to provide as a community organization extracts from their report to ours, so you'll see it there at the end of our report. But you can refer to the report for full recommendations, and their full recommendations have a great deal about the specific community groups that helped with the efforts during the storm to provide water, food, shelter, and warmth to individuals. I really appreciate you listening. We hope we've done our best to provide a voice for the citizens of Austin to relay to you how devastating this storm was to them, still continues to be for many, and the harsh reality of it, the failure of the electrical grid and those lasting effects on the citizens of Austin. A council member stated earlier that, low probability, low risk for certain storms like Uri in February to occur, but I don't believe that we know that anymore we're living, under global warming and things are changing. So I don't know that we know that these things will be low probability anymore. And something we do know, though, is that we're at the mercy of our state elected officials in ERCOT for an electrical grid. So whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, we must have an emergency plan to be prepared so that, back to the fire briefing, they're working under a situation, all emergency services, of rescue and organized survival versus, search and recovery. Thank you for your time, and we're ready for any questions you may have.
I want to begin by just thanking you all. This was a tremendous amount of work, and the information that you guys have been able to chronicle and pull together, critically important as part of the review of this incident from so many different perspectives. And it does not go unnoticed that you all drew the responsibility of being the interface with large parts of this community that were angry and frustrated, but wanting to be able to record the measure of the work that they've done. The report very complete. You hit so many different areas, pulling together the significant takeaways in those areas. You also not only do you obviously mention the things that did not go well and need improvement, but when you're working with the community like that, you really do highlight the things that went well. A community that was able to come together and to provide a lot of the things that wouldn't have been provided had they not been there. And manager, as we go through this, I think we've talked about this in lots of different settings, that's a real strength of the community, and it needs to be incorporated more formally in the response that we have as a city, and to acknowledge that in these kinds of disasters, that's something that's going to have to happen. And if we approach it that way, then I think we're going to be able to bring it a lot more support and make it more effective, more efficient, and do honor to the people that are doing that work. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Councilmember Tovo.
Yeah, I really wanted to add my huge thanks. I know all of you are volunteers on other commissions as well, and you came together to serve on this one very quickly. Your work was much more abbreviated than usually our task forces are, and I had an opportunity to attend the one, but then I listened to several others and look forward to catching up on some of the other hearings, because it was, I found the comments from the community really powerful and very moving and very instructive, and just, I appreciate very much the way that you provided a process and a space for people to process what, as Sarita, I think you said, was really traumatic and very painful for so many in our community. And the job that you did, I think, was just very extraordinary and unusual in many ways. We don't usually pull together a task force to serve in quite the role you did. And as one of you rightly noted, you didn't have a guidebook, and I loved the way you iterated and responded to the situation. Initially had kind of the district-based sessions, and then quickly pivoted and had a different meeting structure. Anyway, I really applaud and regard your work as a model for other task forces, how we can pull together a group of kind of expert commissioners and give them a task that's kind of unusual, and let you develop a process that works with the community. So I just found that to be really valuable. The recommendations that you've forwarded to us from those community members, I think, are in many ways consistent with what we're seeing in other analyses, but you've also highlighted some very important points that I don't think we would have gotten through any other process, and I think that's just super valuable. And I am really hopeful that the work that you did and that the community members who participated in those meetings did in coming and sharing their truths will help us make sure that we never that we face the next crisis much better prepared. And so, Mayor, you just highlighted it, the work of the community, like how do we marshal this community force? And I really like the way those of you on the task force expressed it in this report. It seems to me, we really need to think about the operations, emergency operations at the city of, how does the city provide a structure where we can bridge to those community organizations that are trusted voices, that have resources that the city doesn't necessarily have in terms of language capabilities and cultural competencies and relationships that the city doesn't necessarily have. But I think that is really going to require re-envisioning kind of the way we handle emergency operations at our municipality. And so I think the resilience hubs will benefit greatly from the work that you did and the recommendations that you forwarded from those community members. But I look forward to the conversation, because I think we have a lot of work to do as a city of figuring out how to make that work well, and really to build and to support, to build on and support those community organizations that are doing this great work. As I think that baseline, I like the phrase that you used in the report of having a baseline preparedness, that our community generally needs that baseline preparedness, as well as help from the city in knowing what kinds of supplies to have on board, but also situating those supplies in different places throughout the city, whether those are food supplies or charging stations, which is an idea I hadn't heard anywhere else except, and I think that can exist separately from the resilience hub, so I appreciate that suggestion. And the need for a real clear plan so that we all know how to respond is super helpful. So I really don't have any questions for you. I think the work you did just speaks for itself, and I really appreciate all of you for taking on what would have been a hard task and taking it on with few guidelines, and then again just adapting and changing the situation, changing the process to meet to meet the situation that was required. And I really would be remiss if I just didn't acknowledge Patricia for the work that she did in making sure that that you had a structure and a process and a space. I just, she is someone who does lots and lots of work for the city, and all of it is important, but she took on an additional task as well and just handled it with such grace and expertise, and I'm really appreciative of her efforts.
Councilman Fuentes.
Thank you. I also want to reiterate, sorry, phone was near the mic. Also wanted to reiterate my gratitude for the task force, for the work that you all did and creating a safe space for our community to share their feedback. Certainly, hearing the stories of trauma that our community went through, I know that can also have a toll with it. And so I just want to thank each member of the task force for taking the time to hear those stories and to absorb the trauma that our community faced and experiences, and to a certain extent is still dealing with. And so just wanted to say thank you. Today we had a briefing on wildfire preparedness, and now we're talking about the impacts of the winter storm. And so it's not lost on me that today's topic's on two severe events has had in our community and what that means. And recently the UN released the IPCC report, which just detailed what we already know, that we are in a climate crisis and that we should expect more severe weather events, and that the human impacts and the toll will increase. And so as our community has this conversation of how do we create and build community resilience, I'm really proud to be part of a council that has really championed and prioritized emergency preparedness and understands the value of preparing our community and investing in systems that are equitable, because we know that when any type of disaster strikes, not everyone experiences it equally, and we have to do more to ensure an equitable response and preparedness. And one thing that came out of the wildfire briefing and the Winter Storm Task Force report is the need for us to improve our communication structures and systems. And so I really would love for us to have a conversation at some point, if we're hearing this on the wildfire preparedness and also with the severe weather event, and certainly even with flooding, that we start thinking about how can we really streamline and coalesce those different needs and invest in a single emergency response system. And perhaps we already do that, but it sounds like there might be some gaps in the system. So just wanted to flag that for my colleagues and for staff. Again, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing this feedback and the recommendations that are provided. I think it'd be really helpful and useful for our policy work moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. It's times like this, I really just sort of look around and can't help but express my gratitude for the competence and the capability of the people that I'm surrounded by, my colleagues, and folks like this volunteer task force, this organization of people that came together for no other reason to determine how best we as a city can respond when we need to moving forward. I would be remiss to say that while I appreciate the acknowledgement of myself and my efforts by name, it was certainly an effort, but there's nobody here that didn't fight long and hard and sleeplessly and in the cold and, didn't experience heartache during the course of watching our infrastructure quite literally fail all around us, all the systems failures on behalf of our municipality, if I'm being entirely honest. So sometimes when folks say the city, it just rolls right off your back. And other times they say the city and you feel entirely to blame. And this is one of those times where when you say the city, as a private citizen, I was also disappointed in my city's response. And so this is me extending an official apology on behalf of this body, my colleagues included, for what we weren't able to do as a municipality, what we weren't able to do as a body to know what we needed to know in order to execute more effectively, efficiently, and expediently, frankly, Some of the things that I'm hearing today, I'm hearing for the first time. But I certainly had my experiences with my neighbors and my constituents. And so I do look forward to us taking this information, this data, and doing something good with it. I'd also like to make certain to say I was not alone when it comes to members of this body that were out there fighting morning, noon, and night. There are a lot of folks that are sitting on that dais or that are looking at you virtually from their homes that worked really, really long, hard hours in one way or another. So I just want to remind our constituents that are watching or listening, just because you don't see us does not mean we're not fighting for you. I just want you to never, ever think that a lack of visibility is a lack of presence, because that's not the case. And just to reiterate for the task force members, we can't thank y'all enough for your contribution to processes like this. We couldn't do it without you. We can't get better without your contribution and, frankly, without your criticism. So thank you for your candor, and thank you for your participation and continued advocacy for our community. We really do appreciate you.
Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to be able to add to the thanks and appreciation that people are showing to you today. When I was able to come and sit with the task force for one of the evenings, you just provided such a warm and welcoming space for people to really just be able to tell you everything they were thinking and feeling, and to really be able to get that out. So I know that was a lot of information to receive, and it is so appreciated for you to have compiled a document that we can now reference our own points. I know as we've discussed this as a council, everybody has their own experience too in our own districts about what worked and what, abjectly failed, in the personal infrastructure of going through an event like this. And so I really just appreciate that it is so timely that we are talking about this now as we talk about wildfires and floods, as was mentioned before. So I just want to add on my thanks to you for really taking a difficult process to go through and really helping us as a body and as a city be able to be better prepared, because things like this will be happening again, and we all need to have our own plans no matter what hits us. And so thank you so much for your service on this. It was very much noticed and very much appreciated.
Colleagues, anything else? Councilmember Alter, and then Councilmember Kassar.
Thank you. I want to recognize Councilmember Togo for bringing forward the resolution to create the task force in the first place. I think it was a really important step that our community needed as we try to heal and move forward and prepare for the future. And I want to thank the committee members. I too had the opportunity to join you for a meeting and appreciated the intention with which you approached the task. And as Councilmember Ellis noted, the warmth and the way that you really made people feel like they could share with you openly and honestly, so we would get the best information. So thank you for that. I think that to do justice to your work, it's going to depend on what the next steps are. How we take up the task, for instance, that a couple of my colleagues have highlighted of, how do we build these relationships stronger with the nonprofits moving forward. I look at it as a strength of our city that we have so many different types of people and different organizations and groups that stepped up. That is what needs to happen in a disaster, but it doesn't have to be willy-nilly in the moment. It can be structured and nurtured, and the ecosystem can be cultivated over time, so that if there is a next time, that we are ready, and there will be a next time. What we are seeing is climate change and these systemic failures of our infrastructure, and there will be a next time, whether we want it or not. The challenge for us is whether we'll be ready for next time and whether we'll be ready in time. So my question's actually for the city manager. I had an opportunity the other day to speak with the consultant who's working on your after action report, but I think it's important that you maybe provide some clarity on what are the next steps, what you're doing. There were clearly things that happened on the city side that were not air cut going down, where we need to see improvement. So I want to invite you to speak to us and to our commissioners about what the next steps are, and if you can also include in that how our various commissions will be engaged in those next steps and helping us to build that resilience for our community.
Thank you, Councilmember, and really appreciate the opportunity to have this feedback from our community panel task force today. This does inform how we're looking comprehensively at the after-action reporting that is needed from the city regarding this historic and unprecedented storm that our community faced. As was mentioned by ACM Mariano, and you pointed out the work that our consultant is doing to compile the formal after-action report, which should be done by the end of September, and we will be scheduling a work session with council to review that so we can talk through the recommendations, the findings, and then most importantly, what we are doing in response to that. But we were not waiting for that report, and so already many of our departments are actively responding to resilience efforts, to ways that we can improve the effectiveness and the ability to ensure that when this happens again, we are prepared. And so everyone from Austin Energy to Austin Water and our emergency operations departments across the board, they have been doing internal reviews, and we're happy to include some of that information in the report as well, but we are not waiting for that information to make those improvements. I will follow up with you after this to see how the boards and commissions can also play a role in this. But we haven't thought through exactly how that might play out, but the logistics of that will be critical to have their input as we move forward as well.
Thank you. Perhaps you also can reach out to the leadership of this work group, since they're mostly representatives, I believe, from the different commissions. They would be able to probably give some input about how we could most effectively leverage our commissions at the next step. I do want to point out, something that we discussed a little bit when we were talking about the Resilience Hub resolution. In 2019, I put forward a resolution calling for a climate emergency, including several actions for the city to take, acting as if we actually were under a climate emergency and various steps. And some of these preparedness things and resilience things were called for in there. So I would just ask that you, review that and then make sure that we are taking all of the steps that were called for in there. We don't currently have somebody who's in charge of, sustainability, and, we still don't, we had Councilmember Poole's resolution on the Chief Resilience Officer. We still don't have those pieces. We need to be able to act faster in relationship to climate change. It's challenging. It doesn't fit into our boxes of our departments. But that's why, we need at the highest city level to be, taking those actions and putting in the resources and having the leadership to pull folks together so that we can address stuff. We talked earlier about wildfire, and we said, it's everyone's problem. It is an issue also that crosses all of the departments, and we've been working really hard over the last several years to make sure that we understand it's not just AFD, and there are things that we have to do, and that's true of a whole host of climate. It's true of the flooding issues. There's just so many of these issues that cross departments, and it's peculiar to the climate change challenges, but these are the things where we're going to have the system failures again. And we've got to be prepared, we've got to be resilient, and we got to mitigate and prevent. And we really have to figure out how we do this across all of the challenges that we face. It's not easy, but if we have the intention and the focus, I think we can make inroads.
Councilmember Kassar.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank the members of the task force as well for your work and to validate what it is that you have put in your presentation. As you flip through the slides, on every single line, I've had sort of flashbacks to moments in that storm that I'd forgotten, I think, for lack of sleep and stress. And I think everybody on the dais and so many of our city staff probably felt the same way. And I think that it would be important, Manager, for us to look at these slides and these highlights and have our response and how it is that we're going to do things differently and better in each of those categories. And each of those categories, I think that people did step in to do that work, And we should think about where it is our systems fell short, but then where it is that the community and businesses and nonprofits and everyday people stepped in, so that we can think about what the best response is in the future, so that it wouldn't feel as ad hoc. When you talk about people with disabilities, one of my flashbacks was to Capital Metro employees at like 9:30 at night helping carry people that had to use walkers from the bus into the Northeast High School gym. And that then it had gotten wet and slippery where they were walking, and somebody just handed me a mop, not knowing who I was, saying, you need to help. When you talk about the need for translation services, I just think of all of the phone calls from Univision and Telemundo asking for information that they were struggling to get, and all the people that stepped in to fill those gaps. When you talk about our folks that were vulnerable having lack of access to essential supplies, I think of the different council members here who, knowing that there was a real lack of water in my district, them making phone calls and getting water into my own district. And I appreciate each of you who are doing that work. And so I just want to really validate what it is that you've written here, because as you say it out loud, it reminds me, and I think reminds every single person on the dais here, of what had to get done. And we need to think about how to prepare for that and how to get it done much more effectively next time. So I just want to appreciate and validate what it is you brought forward here today as we work on getting much more prepared for the next disaster.
Councilmember Renteria, then Councilmember Kitchen.
Thank you, Mayor, and I agree a lot with my colleagues about what's been said, and I would also want to thank the committee. This was a failure that I just, the city just really failed not taking it really serious when the report came out that there was a storm coming. I lived here 71 years in Austin now, and so I learned through past that where my water main was at, how to cut off the water off, drain my pipes, and stock up with water and food, and really, but there was no warning from the city at all about what was coming toward us. And that was a big failure. We could have prevented a lot of these busted pipes. And my biggest concern also is the apartments. These pipes that were exposed, I don't know what they're made of, but they sure was able to bust really easy. And that itself affects a lot of people. Some of these apartments are over 300 units. So, and that created a problem for us, and definitely with a water power plant out there that had the employees didn't even know how to cut it off or turn it on. Rebecca Bain here at Johnson, a senior high tower that's 200 feet, they had an emergency generator. They never had checked it out. Have never been checked out. When you needed the emergency, it wouldn't come on and it wouldn't start. So luckily our firefighters with the Metro coordinating walked up and carried people down from the 15 story apartment there so that we could take them to a very safe location where it was warm and they could get food and water. This is really a failure that we really need to thank God for this committee here that came up with a lot of the solutions that we need to really take it serious. And thanks again. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Councilmember Kitchen.
I want to say thank you also to the committee members, and I appreciated the chance to participate in one of your hearings. I also want to say that I find the recommendations very practical and things that we can be following up on. They align, as others have said, with things that we're hearing from other analyses and other sources, and they're also very specific and practical that we can act on. So one example I think that I will share with the Senior Commission, I'm not certain if you all have that connection or not, but I think it would be important that they may need to reach out to you all. A resolution that I passed back in the spring, I think it was, asked the Senior Commission to work with our staff to follow up on one of the interventions we tried during winter storm that really needs to be built upon and made more lasting and done in a better way. And that was the telephone outreach to seniors to try to identify folks at risk and in need of help. So the Senior Commission is following up on what was done during that project, what might be institutionalized for the future and made something lasting, so that in the future, in future emergencies, we have a plan in place and a method in place to reach seniors and vulnerable populations in particular, to identify their needs more quickly and be able to respond to them. So I noticed that one of your recommendations spoke to the need to have a process in place to reach out to those populations. And I wanted to let you know that the Senior Commission is working on that. And I will ask my office to make sure to connect them to you all as they proceed with their work. Thank you.
Councilor Poole.
I think I may be the last one to speak, so I just bundle up all of the comments and my colleagues directed specifically to the volunteers on the task force to thank you and to share my specific appreciation for all of that heavy lift that you all did to put together this compilation of information. I think that there were many, many, many instances of individual heroism in our community that all came together to help us get through, and that's a strength of our community, and we all want to build on that. And I think you've provided us with a really strong platform with your report and recommendations for us to do that. And in light of the work that the city staff is also doing, I'm sure that the reports will dovetail, that yours has the added shine of being so direct from the community, and that was a really important element of the work that you've done. It's really instrumental. So thank you so much. And here's to continuing the work to make us better as a community. Thanks.
Committee, do you have anything you want to say before we end the meeting?
Just thank you, Mayor Adler. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Harper Madison. Thank you to all of council. We serve on boards and commissions, and we served on this task force because we love this city. We believe in you. We believe in the city manager, Spencer Cronk, and we know that you will implement a plan going forward, and that this will never happen to us again, and things will be better. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, thank you for the work. Colleagues, I think that's everything that we needed to address today. Kathy, did you want to?
Just extremely briefly, I just wanted to remind the manager, the cover memo talks about archiving the public portal, the stuff that came through the public portal, the testimony, the documents, the images. But I believe the original resolution also asked that as part of that archive that goes to the Austin History Center, that the meetings and any materials associated with the meetings also become part of that archive, so that someone going back can also see those, can really hear directly from the members of the community who participated in the meetings, as well as the members themselves.
Great, thank you. And with that, colleagues, I think that is all of the business. Pio, were you waving or raising your hand? Saying goodbye. Thank you. The time is 4:12. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all on Thursday.
around the bend. Goodbye, goodbye. 6 shooters on and we're gone again. Goodbye, Liza Jane. Oh, how I love her. Ain't that a shame? Oh, how I love her. Goodbye, Liza Jane. There's 3 wheels off and the axle's